Welcome to Lost in Our 40s, the Good Girl series. Special guest today is Nikki. Come and listen into our conversation. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to this video between Nikki and myself. So I'm Shiro. I shall let Nikki introduce herself shortly, but I'll just start it off. The video is about breaking out of the good girl bind. So I have a good girl background, have been working on it, and to introduce myself a little more, I am the host of a podcast called Lost in Our 40s. I am the author of Date Like Cleopatra, The Good Girl Flips the Script. And I do a couple of other things. I run a website called shirondune.com where you can find everything that keeps me busy. That's me.
I'm Nikki and I have a YouTube channel and it's all about performers' mindset and particularly about performance anxiety.
Great. So we are talking about the good girl. And maybe to set the stage, I'll give a little description of my my ongoing good girl experience, and let you do the same, Nikki, if you like. But I realized that I was a good girl probably a little late, if I'm honest. I I have been a good girl probably all my life, but probably thought that everyone strives to be a good girl. So there was nothing wrong from where I stood with being a good girl. But then it's in time, um, maybe probably in my 40s actually, that I started realizing that there was some disadvantage that I was experiencing from living out of that mold. And we'll talk a little more about what the good girl is. But Nikki, do you want to give a bit? What's your experience? How did you discover?
Yeah, I think mine's pretty similar to yours. I've only really recently discovered it in my 40s that I am like a good girl and I didn't really know what was going on. I just knew that in like romantic relationships and even in platonic friendships, I was trying to be like good all the time and just wondering why I was kind of pushing people away. And I think it manifested in other things as well, like perfectionism in jobs and different things like that. So so it's only just recently I've realised that it is like this thing of being a good girl, and it's definitely is a disadvantage, like you say.
Mm, yeah. So, what is the good girl? I think what is the good girl? I think you've given a good description in terms of how it was showing up for you. How it was showing up for me was probably much about the same. Just I realized that I wasn't winning. I was doing everything that I thought I should be doing, and yet at some point I started feeling that something was off. That I was getting the shorter end of the stick. That I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. Okay. So in the creation of a good girl, no one's really born that way. I don't know if that's true. I think it's true. I think the good girls are always a function of society. Society has taught us to be good girls. It is well and pleasing that you strive for more, that you do a little more. So I'll give the example. The one that's just quickly come to mind is school. That the teacher would mark on the side, good girl, when I've gotten the good grades or, done something great. And I liked that. So I'd strive for that. I'd want to do everything just right so that I can get that. Or maybe I used to get stars at some point for doing, I don't know what. So if you are meant to collect, I think 5 stars, I think they were gold stars. So you collect the 5 gold stars, and then that's telling everyone in class that you're good. And it was such a nice feeling. So that encouraged me to be a good girl.
Yeah.
An example from your end.
Yeah, let me think. Um, think maybe being like shamed for expressing myself when I was a kid. That was like an example of like you can't express yourself. You have to fit into a mold. Like if you express yourself, then you are going to be judged and looked on, and you won't like fit into the mold. So I think that was like one thing.
Yeah. And I have a similar one. I had there's a call for respect at home. And I don't know if it was just the African concept that from the African perspective, your elders must be respected. I just remember having
Yeah,
this long push to be very respectful of elders, and I didn't really know what it meant in terms of I used to be told a lot of things I've done wrong. So because of
yeah,
that, not really understanding how what this respectful behavior was meant to be, what I did is then I stopped speaking as much because then that way you're not going to be in the wrong as much. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's
Mm,
true. Yeah, I think it was like similar for me. I think that just my family dynamic, it was very difficult. Like, so if either of me or my sister did speak up, then we were told to be quiet, or we'd make somebody angry. So the safest thing to do was just to not say anything.
mm, mm. Yeah. Now, and another example I can think of is at church. So I was brought up Roman Catholic, and it's not so much the Catholic Church, but I think religion generally that has a messaging of good. Nothing
Yeah,
wrong in and of itself, but then how it would trickle down would depend. That being in the example of I don't know why the example that comes to mind is going for confession. That there's nothing wrong with going for confession if you are a practicing Catholic or if you do believe in it. But the school I was in was a Catholic school that gave an extra special spark and attention to going for confession multiple times. And the point, I think part of that messaging for me anyway became that there's so much sin, there's so much bad that I need to get away from. And
yeah,
I need to move away from that and become the good girl. So that whether or not that was the intention, that is the messaging that I received.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't brought up in the church, but I did go to church for a number of years in my adult life, and I found that it kind of made me, because I already had shame in my psyche from like being a child. I was shamed for things, and I thought that was fundamentally broken. And then I went to church, and that shame was kind of cemented even more, because the message was you are you your behaviors, or some of your behaviors, are sinful. You need to push them down. You need to stop acting that way, or stop doing that. And it kind of made it even worse for me. So yeah,
Mm,
I think church can be a big one. Whether I don't know whether it's an intentional thing, but it's just, unfortunately, if you're saying that some behaviours are sinful, or some things are sinful, then it does get into people's psyche, and they do think, oh yeah, I'm a shameful person.
yeah. And it's super strong about shame. Shame, I read somewhere, is the feeling of being bad. So not so much that what you did was bad, but that you are bad.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
when you
yeah,
carry that around, that's really demoralizing. That really breaks you up to some
yeah,
extent. Yeah. Mm,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes into like, sorry.
No, no, I mean, I was just going to say I absolutely resonate with that. That is something that I absolutely got. And the other place, I don't know if you're going to say something before I go to the other place that had popped into my mind. I think I interrupted you.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say that, yeah, if you do feel like you're fundamentally broken, and
Yeah.
that you are bad, there's something wrong with you, it will go into every area of your life. And it'll really be heavy and like weigh down on every single area of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. The other area that came to my mind was TV, the media. You had, I remember this program called Seventh Heaven. I don't know if you know it. It was a program about a family, a godly family that had seven children, and everyone would always be doing something good. And it did have an underlying storyline, fine, but a lot of the messaging there was you have to be good. And not
Yeah.
just that, across a lot of the TV that I watched, there was just a lot of messaging that you're meant to you're meant to do good, you're meant to be good, you're meant to strive for good, which again is not a bad message, but it's what of sort of creates this feeling that I do not get over until the age of 40, that there is a requirement for me to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think society as well. But maybe the two are interlinked. I don't know. The media has a big effect on society, doesn't it? So, but yeah, definitely for us females as well in society, we're meant to be this like almost like perfect person, aren't we? Where we're not meant to have certain emotions or certain feelings or do certain things. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And on society, I'd add on like neighbors, friends, relatives. So, because, and I think you're absolutely right, because there is this overlying message that society has sent to everyone,
mm,
the neighbor has no qualms of coming to tell me how what a good girl I am because I've done X, Y, and Z. And she'd tell me that, and then I'd feel happy because look, I was a good girl, and that's a good thing. It's good to be. I want that. I want to
yeah,
strive for that. I want to continue being told that I'm good. What else can I do to ensure that I get this uplifting feeling that all of society has told me is what I'm meant to be striving for? Yeah.
it's kind of like a bit of an addiction, isn't it? Then the good girl thing, in a way, because yeah, like you're saying, you're getting positive reinforcement, so you think, oh yeah, I want to do it again. Yeah.
I love that. An addiction. An addiction for little girls. Can you imagine that? And yeah, it's a high. You just keep getting it whenever anyone tells you that you're good. Yeah. So from this conditioning, the conditioning is that society has now been giving you this messaging, has been laying this groundwork for you from your very innocence when you had no idea that there was anything wrong with it. And society also probably doesn't think there's anything wrong with it. But then what this does
Mm,
is that it creates little blocks of beliefs. So our beliefs are the things that we've picked up over time. I expect we are born like a clean slate. We don't believe in anything. And then over time, we get these little things that we build our lives on. Our worldview is based on these beliefs that we have. And this conditioning that happened over time has created certain beliefs that can limit our life experience and our perception of ourselves and even our own interaction with ourselves. So this is what we're calling limiting beliefs. Will you take us forward? What with
yeah.
the yep.
Yeah, so I think some of the limiting beliefs I've had are that I'm not good enough. That's like a major one. There's something wrong with me. Um, I have to be perfect to be able to be loved. I'm not lovable. And if I do something like I can't express myself if there's something that I don't think's right, or I can't stand up for myself if somebody is being mean to me, for instance. Like, because that would be bad if I did that.
Mm. And if we dig down a little into them, because I have all the same, but digging down to explain the tie between the good girl and the belief, like I'll also take that I'm not good enough. It became that always striving for this high. I like that. I like this addiction connection. But yeah, always striving for this means that you can only do so much.
Yeah,
So at some point, you won't be able to get the good girl because even if you overextend yourself to the maximum extent, it reaches a point where there's a gap. And when you reach
yeah,
that gap, then you feel, no one's telling me good girl. I'm not good enough.
yeah,
I failed. I'm wrong. Mm,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You'll never ever get there. It's impossible, isn't it? It's impossible to be perfect.
yeah,
So it's a never ending quest, isn't it?
yeah. And that's the other tie, the perfection. I don't know if I'll get this right. I read somewhere. Oh, will I find it? Perfection is like a masking of was it control? There was like a very negative element that sits under perfection. And I can't remember if
Yeah.
it's control, but whatever it is this in trying to, if for whatever reason, the example that has come to my mind is writing my letters. So if I need to write my letters in just a particular kind of way, um, what I'm actually trying to do is to control the perception of the teacher, to have the teacher tap me on the back or the
Yeah.
head or wherever to tell me, good girl. And so
Yeah.
it's not so much, it's not a positive, because as you said, you'll never reach there. But then it's
Yeah.
not as wholesome as one might otherwise think, that I'm just a perfectionist. I like things being done well. No, the reason I want them done well is so that I can control the
Mm.
situation around me. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. It's like if you're a little girl and you're not being loved, and you think to yourself, right, okay, I'll be perfect then, and that way everybody will love me. So then, really, you're trying to control the outcome, aren't you? Trying to make somebody feel a certain way towards you,
Yeah,
and that kind of carries on into adult life then. So yeah, it's
absolutely.
definitely, yeah, I agree. It's definitely a control thing, isn't it?
Mm, mm, absolutely. And what there's the other one. I don't know. You mentioned quite a few, and I can't remember them. So I'll just pick one of my own. And I think you also mentioned this. Not well, from my perspective, there was a feeling of not being lovable, because I felt I needed to reach a
Yeah,
certain plateau. I needed to reach a certain level in order to be loved. I needed to do certain things. I needed it. I didn't think that love is something that would come naturally, because I felt that you needed to do a certain level of things in order to receive love. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Same here. Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
same.
We have here being less than. They're similar, but maybe they're just nuanced elements of the same overall message. Because being
Yeah,
less than, from my perspective, was feeling, again, because I couldn't reach, I wasn't always able to get to whatever it is that would make me the good girl, would make me have, patted, would elicit the response that I have wanted, my high. I'm going to stick with that one. Then the feeling that I get on the other side is that I'm less.
yeah,
It's tied to not being worthy, but I'm just less than, I'm less than others. Other people maybe deserve love automatically, but because I haven't managed to do this thing, then I am less than them. Mm, yeah.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely identify with that.
yeah.
Mm.
Do we have anything more? I have here needing to do and not be. Does that ring a bell to you?
Yeah, because you're not used to just being loved for being. Like it's like you have to do something to earn that love. Mm.
Yeah. Mm, you'd also mentioned,
Yeah,
yeah, trying to fit in to be accepted.
yeah,
Yeah. So the feeling that you're not,
yeah. Trying
I,
to get everybody's approval and fit in, I think.
yeah. So yeah, we're having sound problems. So that's, if you see a bit of a lag between us, that might be a bit of the thing. We tried to fix it, but it didn't really work. So, but then I'll just go with this. The trying to fit in to be accepted is, again, it's again all related. That I'm not enough just being me. I I feel like everyone else has it all figured out. They know how things are meant to work. I'm not quite there. So I need to change myself to become like them. And after I do that, it's only then that I can be accepted. So I need to deny myself. There's something wrong with me. So I deny me. Then after that, I can be accepted by other people.
Yeah, yeah. I think that sums it up.
Okay. Good. Then we move to the way out. So, having discovered, hopefully, well, not, actually, not hopefully, hopefully, being a good girl has nothing to do with you. But on the rare occasion that you've been listening to us and then have realized that you do have good girl tendencies, then the question is how to get out of it, how to, maybe the why and the how. Why, Nikki? Why get out of being a good girl?
I think for me, it's really not served me at all. It's actually been quite destructive for my life. I think I've been an extreme good girl. So I really haven't been honest and authentic in my relationships with people. I've always been trying to please them and tell them what they want to hear, which is people don't respect you if you do that, and it kind of turns them off to you. And I think also they find it difficult to trust you if you're not being your authentic self and you're just telling them what they want to hear. Then it makes them feel unsafe, I think. So definitely in my relationships, I think like with everything career wise I've tried to do, that perfectionism has come in. So I've always felt like I've not been good enough and not had the confidence to do it. So I think for me, if I carry on, I know if I carry on living this way, I'm not going to have any authentic relationships. I'm not going to really get anywhere in my career. I'm not going to be able to stand up for myself against people. So it's not going to be a great life unless I make a decision to change.
That's really powerful. And I absolutely relate. The only thing I'll add is also I had a feeling of being unhappy and I couldn't put a finger on it. Just being, feeling all these feelings of less than and non-lovability.
Yeah,
It wasn't a good place to be. So I needed to
no,
figure it out. And once I started feeling it, then that's what I tried to pull the thread to understand. I feel this way. Why do I feel this way? So it was in then trying to go
yeah,
back to understand what had created this. It was almost a deadness inside, this feeling of just things are
yeah,
off. And it was from that I
yeah,
realized I managed to tie it back to this whole good girl concept. And surprisingly to me, I didn't know. I didn't know that there was something called the good girl syndrome. It's called a syndrome. I had to ask my friend Google. I sat down with Google when I started trying to figure out what this is all along. Then I found so much material online, and I was like, has the world known this? How has everyone known this and no one has come to tell me that this life that I've been living, that society told me was how I should live, is actually what is
yeah,
killing me a little inside. So it was really insidious, and I'm glad that I came across the knowledge. And once I knew that, then I had to do anything I can to put myself back into my life. Mm.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I think we can just go through life and have no idea that this is like a wrong, but it's like a not true. This belief is not true, and that we are allowed to be authentic and we're allowed to be in our own power, and we're allowed to not get on with people, and we're allowed to stand up for ourselves and be like a whole person without everybody, without anybody else's approval.
Absolutely. So, how to get out? The $1 million question. How to get out? You'd mentioned internal control. I'll let you talk a little about that.
Yeah. So, well, I think it's first of all um, knowing that there's an issue, and then like making the decision you're going to get out of it. But then, yeah, I think for me, it's really been about having an internal, I think it's called an internal locus of control rather than an external locus of control. So it's really developing a relationship with myself and trusting myself and my own intuition on things, and not seeking approval from other people on the outside. So there's lots of times when your values or your opinions don't match up with other people, and that's okay. It's okay to disagree and sometimes go your separate ways. but you have to stay authentic to yourself and trust yourself. And as long as you're, as long as you're being true to yourself, you're not doing any harm to other people, then it's kind of being in that internal integrity and knowing that you're a whole person and you don't need approval from other people, but you just need to approve of yourself and love yourself for who you are.
I love that. I've heard the reference of internal locus of control being this view that you impact your life. What is happening in your life, you have not just agency, but you play a part. Life is not just what's happening around you. So
Yeah,
external locus is that it's other people doing things. Internal locus is that you also play a part. And I think that's really, really important in the good girl. It's kind of a shake because if you do realize
yeah,
that you have something to do with this, then in my case, why am I unhappy? And part of unraveling that is that I realized that I didn't even know myself. I'm so used to bending over backwards and doing things that other people ask of me or want to do, or sh- quieting my voice so that I don't have an opinion. That then I realized that, wait, what do I like? Do I like ice cream? Just the basics, starting from the beginning. What is it that I enjoy doing? Because once I can build that, then I can say, I realize that if I
yeah,
don't like ice cream, I I have to have don't. I'm halfway there on the ice cream, so this is partly true. So if ice cream is not something that brightens my eyes with joy at the thought of going to have, then going over to the ice cream parlor with everybody and hanging out might not be my thing. So until I have this conversation with myself, sit down and realize that this is my truth, this is
yeah,
what I like to do, I wouldn't be able to voice an opinion when the ice cream parlor is on the table. Because I since I have no other perspective on my own, then I'd just be going with it, what everyone does. And without realizing it, I might resent it. So I might end up going to the ice cream parlor. I don't have a good playtime because, I didn't like the ice cream. And
yeah,
then I start resenting my friends and saying, these people, they don't even care what I want. And yet I don't know what I want and I haven't voiced what I want. So having this, taking charge of my life experience by actually understanding what's important for me and finding, it's not easy, but finding the wherewithal to word it. So if they are your
yeah,
friends, you should be able to tell them that you do not want to go to the ice cream parlor. And that helps build up
yeah,
your worthiness and confidence.
yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, kind of going back to what you were saying about knowing yourself, you do feel, or I don't know whether you do, but I felt quite kind of like angry and sad because I didn't know what I wanted or didn't have a direction in my life. So yeah, yeah, it's not a good place to be, is it? It's
I felt it completely. And then for me, it was the realization that I am allowed to have. It's like getting permission. And part of the reason that the good girl messaging is a little insidious
yeah,
is that this message, this you've been told, not right out, but you've been told that you should be smaller, you should be less. I always remember, I'll go back to church and hope not to strike too many people the wrong way for this, but there is a verse in the Bible where Christ
yeah,
says that you should.
yeah,
It's a story about a party. So someone went and sat on the more important chair, and then someone who was more important than that guy came over, and then this person had to leave his chair and for the more important person. So the messaging was that you shouldn't be proud, you shouldn't be taking the more important place in such a setup. But how I understood it, and maybe it's my understanding or maybe it's just how I was actually taught, is that you should never never suppose yourself to be important. You are not important, you are the lowest of the low. That was how I understood it, and then I carried this forward. So if I'm the lowest of the low and my friends want to go to the ice cream parlor, why would I give my opinion? They are more important than me. Let them speak. And I think it's important to note that not all girls are good girls. I used to envy the ones who weren't. I secretly envy them because you're meant to be good, but then they used to get away and do other things, and I'd wonder that's terrible. But I think secretly I'd think that's really cool as
Yeah,
well. So so to say that it's not that
yeah.
everyone who read this passage in the Bible got the same understanding, or but for me that's what it was, and it was really really sad to feel that I don't matter. I am small. That I really needed to work on my self love, because then I need if I love myself, then maybe I am lovable.
I
Love
think that's a
self.
big part of it, isn't it? The kind of forming a relationship with yourself and, in a way, like falling in love with yourself.
I like that. How do you fall in love with yourself? I ask you and I ask myself, what steps have you taken in falling in love with yourself?
Yeah. I think a big part of it is having compassion on yourself and knowing that everybody does things that are wrong and it's all due to like conditioning of the mind and that you're only capable of doing the best that you can at that time. So to just completely let go of it and forgive yourself and just know that you're a human being and that you're going to make mistakes. But, it's just part of life. So just, I think it's just accepting that you're not perfect, you are a human being. Um, and if you can accept that and be compassionate on yourself, then that's like the starting part. The starting point, I think, for falling in love with yourself.
Yeah. I that's super important, the self-compassion. For me, I think that was difficult, really difficult to grow as a muscle because I felt wrong. Again, the messaging had been you need to do this, you need to do that. So part of what helped me even grow that muscle was addressing the limiting beliefs. I worked through affirmations. I would look at myself in the mirror and say, you are lovable, you are worthy, you are enough. And that then helped. Hearing it out loud, interestingly, worked some magic because I'm not sure these are messages that I had ever really gotten. You are enough. It's just the direct messaging of the good girl was really really there, so that one was always around me. But then saying that you actually as an individual are worthy was something that I didn't really have as much of around me. So then that conversation with myself then started putting the idea in my head, what if I am enough? Yeah.
If you kind of zoom out and look at it like we're all human beings, we're all like however much 75% water is it, we're all the same. So why is that person better than me? Yeah, so I think self trust really starts with being able to feel your own feelings and feel your own emotions.
The other thing we discussed was the need to feel safe. Being safe is like an integral part to coming out of the good girl shell, because within the realm of trusting yourself and listening to your intuition and understanding that you are enough, you can stand on your own. The safety for me, and it's something even my therapist told me, that being safe is integral, it's key, and safety works differently for everybody, so you need to understand what it is that makes you feel safe. And what it did for me was I realized I had a practice of going to the swimming pool, and I realized that whenever I was in the swimming pool I felt safe. And I thought about it, and it was partly the joy. I think my full body just really really loves being in the pool. And the warmth. So the warmth that I got from the water, the pool that I swim in has warm water, and that warmth made me feel, frankly, it made me
Okay.
feel like going back into, yeah, going back into my mother's womb, and being protected, being safe, being reborn. And we're just talking that there's something about warmth that really, really brings out a feeling of safety. So that's one example I have. Over to you, Nikki. What will you say about safety?
I think a thing that's really helped me is if I just tell myself that we're safe right now. There's nothing, no impending danger. For some reason, that really helps to just say it out loud. If you can say it out loud, we're safe. And another thing that really helps as well is deep breathing. So I think if you can slow your breathing down and breathe deeply, it gets your brain out of that fight or flight mode. So yeah, so just really deep breathing helps.
Mm,
Yeah.
no, really good. And the thing that also helps get away from the good girl paradigm, if I call it that, was recognizing the fact that you're a good girl. And Nikki and I have both shared it's not something that's obvious. Or rather, it's not obvious that being a good girl is something that is pulling you back. So there was a recognition and the decision, an active decision that this is not the life I want anymore.
Yeah, and I think just telling yourself as well that you're a whole human being, you're equal to everybody else, um, and that you don't need to work to get other people's approval.
Another one, we've alluded to it, but for me it was difficult, is setting boundaries. Being a people pleaser, being a good girl meant that I'm always used to saying yes. So setting up boundaries was a challenge because I had to dig deep to find the word no. And fine, you can phrase it in different ways, but part of that digging deep, yes, has to do with the step we said about self love, self worth, and knowing myself and understanding what it was, and the realization that being saying no is not being mean, that is not being confrontational. Standing up for myself is what I must do. I am my knight in shining armor.
Yeah, and also you're not doing anybody else any favors if you're not being honest and authentic. You're not being true to that person, so they can't see who you really are. So it's not, you're not doing them a favor by agreeing with them and going along with them. So it's yeah, it's good to look at it like that, I think. And also knowing that you have rights as well, like you have rights as a human being to be who you want to be and be true to yourself and to say no as well. There's actually a really good book called, I think it's just called Boundaries by Henry Cloud, I think it might be. But that's got like a whole bill of rights that you have as a human being. So that's a really good book to look at for boundaries.
I love it. Um, and to add on that, it comes out in every aspect of your life because even in the workplace, you're only as not just resourceful. Your output at work is really dependent on your being yourself. That if you do feel you need to hide, if you do feel that you cannot speak up, if you do feel that you need to be small, the way it shows up in the workplace is also that you are dimming your light. You're not giving your full potential. And this letting others have their way might not be good for your role, might not be the reason that you got into that particular job in the first place. So to just agree with what you're saying, Nikki, it's not just your own perspective, but your You're speaking up for yourself is good for you, is good for the people around you, is good for your workplace, is good for everyone. So this has been really great. Um, to tie it all off, maybe a special word on shame. We've touched upon it, but shame is really a prison. The societal messaging that creates the good girl and the people pleaser doesn't uses shame to some extent, uses shame as the stick with which to whip everyone into shape. And realizing that this is an implement being used against you should then, hopefully, with that knowledge, being able to spin the shame on its head, turn the torch on it, because shame thrives in silence. So if you are ashamed that you don't go back to my example, like ice cream, or you're ashamed that your friends will not, you're ashamed that you fear that your friends will not like you, because you know everyone says you're meant to be self-confident, you're meant to stand on your own, and yet you do have this feeling, you have the feeling that you need them to like you, and you know that you're not meant to. So what can happen there is that you can build up a shame. You can build up this shame and tell yourself that I'm so terrible, I'm bad. And this is the shame that we really need to push you to fight against this shame, because I have absolutely been there. And it's this realization, what Nikki mentioned about self-compassion, that I am allowed to have my own opinion. And even though I really want them to like me, the reason that I want them to like me is based on my conditioning. I understand it, and it might take me some time to be able to fully acclimatize to it, but I am on the path. Today I've taken a small step. I'm happy with the small step I've taken. Tomorrow maybe I'll take two. But any thoughts from you, Nikki, on shame?
Yeah, so like you say, it does. It thrives in secret, doesn't it? And it thrives on you kind of internalizing it. So if you can find somebody that you trust, um, like even like a counselor or something, and talk about it, that's like a really big thing to help dispel the shame, and understanding that you are just a human being, you're not perfect, you're not meant to be perfect, and nobody's perfect. That can really help to get rid of some of the shame as well. I think as well, just knowing that most people do feel a certain level of shame. I think that it's different for different people. I mean, I think obviously with us, ours is probably a little bit higher. Um, but I think everybody really does feel a certain amount of shame just being a human being in this society that we've created does unfortunately foster that level of shame. So it's just um, finding a way to deal with it, but knowing that it is like something that most people have. So you're not alone in feeling it as well.
Yeah, beautiful there. And I think with that, we shall tie off. I'll just to say again. So I'm Shiro. I run the podcast Lost in Our 40s. I'm available at lostinourforties.com or shirondune.com, and I am a coach and have spaces available for coaching if you're interested.
Yeah, and I am Nikki, and I have a YouTube channel all about performers' mindset and especially performance anxiety.
Great, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We hope that this has been useful. And if this is the beginning of the journey for you, take heart. We, recovering good girls, the, path is, there's light. The path is strewn with possibility, and once you start taking the first step, then you must take the next steps after that, because you then start feeling good about yourself, and there's so much possibility that was possibly not available to you before. So we encourage you to carry on.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. There's definitely light at the end of the tunnel, and you might have to go through a little bit of a period where people fall out with you if you stand up for yourself or have boundaries. But just know that if that happens, they're not meant to be in your life, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you will find your people that you're meant to be with, and opportunities will start to open up, and life will start to get better.
Perfect. And thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Music by Atemi Oyungu. Content and production by me, Shiro. Get in touch at lostinourforties.com.